How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, we're going to talk about the Sebastian Roger case. December 7th, 2025, he will be 17 years old. He's been gone for almost 2 years. Disappeared somewhere between February 25th and February 26th of 2024. This is his mom, Katie, on my right. And that's his stepfather, Chris. They're the Proudfoots. And this is his real father, Seth Rogers. Biological. There he is with Sebastian. This is an extremely complicated case because it's like this boy just disappeared from the face of the earth. And then you got a family that's just more divided than they already are. Scandals between the investigators. And nothing has brought us closer to what has happened to Sebastian. So today, we're going to tell a story, bring some awareness back into the mix again. I've done my research, so this is a little bit lengthy, but it has to be told. And as I said, his 17th birthday is coming up December 7th, so hopefully there's a reminder so people can just get themselves reinvested. I was watching another YouTube channel who said this is a cold case, but it's not a closed case. Difference is a cold case means they're still looking for leads, but it's still active. And obviously a closed case means it's closed. So on the morning of February 26, 2024, 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers vanished from his bedroom in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And nearly 2 years later, no one knows what happened to him. And the search for answers has torn this family apart. So let's take it back to February 26, 2024. So it started like any Monday. And any Monday in the Proudfoot household in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Katie Proudfoot walked down the hallway around 6 a.m. to wake her 15-year-old son up for school, just as she has done many times before. Time to get up, Sebastian. She said it as soon as she entered the room. And normally Sebastian would turn and look at her, maybe groan a little, the way teenagers do when forced or when faced with another school day. But this morning was different. Sebastian didn't turn. He didn't groan. He wasn't there. Katie's first thought was logical. Must have gotten up early for breakfast. But as she searched the house, checking the kitchen, the living rooms, the bathrooms, that logical explanation evaporated. The panic that replaced it was unlike anything she ever experienced. Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers was gone. And nearly 2 years later, no one knows where he went or what happened to him. So I thought, you know what? Let's first see what we know about Sebastian Rogers, because we don't know if he was abducted, if he was lured, or whether this could have been planned on his end or it could have been impulsive. So who is Sebastian Rogers? So before Sebastian Rogers became a missing person case, before his face appeared on Amber Alerts across the state of Tennessee, before his disappearance fractured his family and sparked one of the most divisive true crime cases in recent memory, he's just a kid. 15-year-old boy who loved video games, who was excited about agriculture classes at school, who said, "I love you" to his mom, and for what I'm hearing, goodbye to his 2 dogs before going to bed that last night. Goodbye. He was born December 7, 2008. Sebastian lived with his mother, Katie Proudfoot, and his stepfather, Chris Proudfoot, in a suburban neighborhood in Hendersonville, Tennessee. That's around half a mile from Beach High School, where he was a student. His biological father, Seth Rogers, lived approximately 45 minutes away. Sebastian was, by all accounts, a smart kid. Katie consistently described him as high-functioning, a gamer who enjoyed his routines and not mischievous. He He wasn't the type to cause trouble, and he wasn't the type to run away. But Sebastian's life wasn't without challenges. Sebastian had two significant diagnoses that shaped his daily life: autism spectrum disorder and an extraordinarily rare genetic condition called 6q27 chromosomal deletion syndrome. Most people have heard of autism. Fewer have heard of 6q27 deletion syndrome, and for good reason. Medical literature documents only a small number of known cases worldwide. The condition occurs when a smaller portion of chromosome 6 is missing, and the effects can be profound. According to medical research, individuals with 6q27 chromosomal deletion syndrome may experience intellectual disabilities ranging from mild to severe, brain malformations, including cerebellar abnormalities, developmental delays before any other birth. Developmental delays before and after birth. Developmental delays before and after birth, speech and communication deficits, hypotonia, which is a low muscle tone, seizure disorders in some cases, and varying degrees of facial dysmorphism. Critically, the severity of symptoms doesn't always correlate with the size of the deletion. Some individuals with smaller deletions have severe symptoms, while others with larger deletions may function relatively well. When combined with autism spectrum disorder, these conditions create compounded challenges in social communication and interaction, understanding abstract danger or consequences, navigating unfamiliar environments, responding appropriately to stress or confusion, and executive functioning, planning, decision-making, anticipating outcomes. But here's what's crucial to understand. Sebastian was not nonverbal. He was not severely impaired. He could communicate. He had interest. He functioned in a school environment. He played video games, and he interacted with his family. Katie's description of him as smart and high-functioning wasn't mother's bias. It was accurate to his capabilities. But his vulnerabilities were still real. So when I was looking at this case and I was trying to figure out what happened, could he have planned and left? Could this have been impulsive? Or again, could he been lured out? Could he been abducted? So again, could Sebastian have formulated a plan to leave and survive on his own? Could he navigate the world independently if something happened? And the answer is complicated. He likely could communicate verbally if he needed help, retain information related to his interest, follow familiar routines, walk significant distances if he chose to, and recognize some danger signals. But he likely couldn't accurately evaluate risk in unfamiliar situations, plan for weather, food, clothing, or navigation, anticipate long-term consequences of decisions, handle sensory overload or disorientation without shutting down, and survive independently for extended periods without adult assistance. Individuals with his combined diagnosis typically do not intentionally disappear long-term, do not hide from rescuers, seek help when able, but only from people they trust or recognize, struggle with impulsivity and poor executive functioning, and become overwhelmed in chaotic or unpredictable environments. This medical profile becomes critically important when evaluating what might have happened the night Sebastian disappeared, because understanding his capabilities and his vulnerabilities helps us understand what was possible, what was probable, and what should have been impossible. So let's talk about the last normal day. According to the FBI's missing person profile, Sebastian was approximately 5'5" tall and weighed between 110 and 120 pounds. He had blonde or brown hair and brown or hazel eyes. He typically wore glasses, black, and they were square framed. That's him. Here he is again. Katie had said he'd been looking forward to the agricultural class at his school where students would work directly with animals. Now, this just wasn't a passing interest. It was something Sebastian was genuinely excited about. He had plans. He had things to look forward to. That detail matters because it speaks to Sebastian's state of mind in the days leading up to his disappearance. This wasn't a depressed teenager with nothing to live for. This wasn't someone who had given up or was planning to leave. He was a kid excited about getting to work with animals at school. And then on the night of February 25th, 2024, he said, "I love you" to his mother and goodbye to his dogs. And those would be the last words Katie would ever hear from her son. Okay, so let's talk about February 25th, 2024. It's a normal Sunday night, but this night, everything changes. So there was nothing unusual about that Sunday evening, nothing that would suggest in retrospect that anything was about to go catastrophically wrong. Around 9 p.m., Sebastian went to bed. Before he did, he said, "I love you" to his mother, something Katie would later repeat in interviews, a detail that clearly meant something to her. He also said goodbye to the family's two dogs, which she found significant enough to mention multiple times. I mean, it's the word goodbye. I thought that was unique too. Katie has said her husband, Chris Proudfoot, was working in Memphis that night and was not home. So he wasn't home. So it's just her and Sebastian. So the house was quiet, normal, unremarkable. And then around 10 p.m., Katie heard a thud coming from Sebastian's room. So 9 o'clock, he goes to bed. 10 o'clock, 10 p.m., you get the thud. This sound, this single moment, has become one of the most analyzed and debated details of the entire case. Guys, when I was doing my research, this thud shows up everywhere. Katie called out to Sebastian, asking if he was okay. He responded that he was fine. Nothing about his voice suggested distress or panic. It was just a noise, the kind of noise that happens in houses with teenagers. Katie didn't think much of it at the time. Why would she? And then she went to bed herself sometime around 11 or 12. That's the time I got. So 11 p.m. or 12 p.m., but somewhere in the middle of there. But that thud has become critical in the investigation because it might represent the last confirmed moment anyone heard from Sebastian Rogers. So the thud, was it a moment he got out of bed? Was it the sound of him opening a window? Was it him dropping something as he prepared to leave? Was it someone else in his room? Or was it completely unrelated to his disappearance? We don't know, and law enforcement has never publicly clarified. But here's what we do know. If Sebastian left around 10 p.m., he had approximately 8 hours of darkness before Katie discovered he was missing. 8 hours to walk, 8 hours to get lost, 8 hours for something to go terribly wrong. Now, if he left closer to dawn, say 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., the window narrows dramatically. He would have left barefoot into 35 to 40 degree Fahrenheit temperature with minimal time to get with minimal time to get far before being reported missing, because she can't find him around 6 a.m. and I think she makes the phone call around 6:30, somewhere around there. We'll get to that. And the timing matters, and the thud might be the key to understanding it. So the thud could have been him leaving or something happening in that room around 10 that could be related to his disappearance. Could be nothing. Yeah, you just don't know. I'm looking that up, like anybody had any theories on it, and it's either, he was trying to leave, going through a window or whatever it is, or somebody was in his room, but in the end, you don't know. It could have meant absolutely nothing. So you could spend all your time looking at that thud and just get you nowhere, or you could spend all that time looking at the thud and it could be something very defining. It's just extremely difficult. So at 6 a.m. is the discovery. The next morning, Katie went to wake Sebastian for school, just like always. Dude, time to get up. But Sebastian wasn't in his bed. Katie has described her initial reaction as assuming he'd gotten up early for breakfast. But as she searched the house and realized he wasn't anywhere inside, she experienced what she called sheer panic. She called Chris, who was still in Memphis for work. According to both of them, they immediately called police sometime around 6:30 or 7 a.m., and that's when the investigation began. Now, mind you, guys, they do call Seth right away as well, but he's working, I believe, overnight, and he doesn't see the message or the calls till around 7:30 a.m. or give or take around that time. But they do let him know. He gets a call as well. All right, so now the investigation begins. Okay, so the puzzle and physical evidence. This is something that I felt we needed to explore because this is relevant, or a lot of people find it relevant. I believe it could be relevant. So as law enforcement arrived and began processing the scene, certain details immediately stood out as unusual. Number one, and for those that are familiar with this case, you know where I'm going, no shoes were missing. Every single pair of Sebastian's shoes was still in the house. This means that if Sebastian left, whether on his own or with someone else, he did so barefoot. In late February in Tennessee, overnight temperatures typically range from the mid-30s to low 40s Fahrenheit. Walking barefoot in those conditions would be painful, uncomfortable, and for someone with sensory sensitivities common in autism, extremely distressing. Runaways almost always take shoes. People who plan to leave take shoes. Even people leaving in panic usually grabs shoes. But Sebastian's shoes, all of them, were still there. So again, if panic was impulsive, he probably would have still gotten his shoes. If this was planned, he would still gotten his shoes. But the question is, we know a little bit about Sebastian. I mean, would he be able to plan this? Is this something that he could plan, knowing that he has autism and the Q627 chromosomal deletion? So these are things that these are concerns mentally that affect long-term planning. I mean, he's more about routine. And I watched some interviews with the father and also the mother and Chris, and they said he is about defined routine. So this is definitely out of character. So there was no belongings taken. That's another thing. So his Nintendo Switch, his most prized possession as a teenage gamer, was left behind. His tablet, his phone, his backpack, his clothes, his favorite comfort items. The only thing Katie believed might be missing was a small yellow flashlight. So that's it, a flashlight. That's all he took. That they think. This is key. Front door was locked. According to Katie, when she discovered Sebastian was gone, the front door was locked. Katie has stated that based on how their other doors lock, requiring keys from the outside, she believes Sebastian would have had to exit through the front door. But here's the problem. Law enforcement has never publicly confirmed the specific locking mechanism of that front door. We don't know. Does it auto lock when closed? Does it require manual locking with the key from outside? Does it have a push button lock that can be engaged from inside before leaving? Or could someone else have locked it? Guys, that's important in this case. And I mean, did he stop and lock the door himself? Or does the door lock automatically? I mean, that's not in the in any public information that I could find. So this detail, the locked door is often cited as evidence Sebastian left deliberately and locked it behind himself. But without knowing how that lock actually works, we can't draw that conclusion. Because a lot of people thought, well, he left on his own because he locked the door. But we don't know how that lock works. I mean, I have a door here that locks automatically. So there was a push for that, and there's nothing public about how that door operates. So that's actually a very big discussion on this case about that door, to try to see if he left deliberately, or could he have been taken or lured. And I saw the back and forth, a few of them, even on some of the interviews where people are mentioning that, or in the comments of some of the videos where people are arguing about the door and saying, what do you mean he locked the door? You don't know if he locked the door. You don't know if the door locked automatically. So I was like, oh, you know what? That's something worth discussing. Let's visit that. So what if the door auto locks? Then anyone could have closed it, Sebastian or someone else, and it would lock automatically. What if it requires a key from outside? Then Sebastian couldn't have locked it unless he had a key with him, which seems unlikely given he left without shoes or belongings. What if it can be locked from inside with a button push? Then Sebastian could have locked it as he left, but that would suggest planning, which contradicts every other piece of evidence. The locked door is important, but without understanding the mechanism, it raises more questions than answers. And then you got the surveillance question. You know, why didn't anyone see him? That's another concern. You look at all the videos, and there's really no video of that front door. So you really don't know if he even left out that front door. So in the age of Ring doorbells and security cameras, it seems almost impossible for a teenager to walk out of a suburban neighborhood in the middle of the night without being captured on someone's camera, and yet that appears to be exactly what happened. Despite multiple homes in the neighborhood having security cameras, there's no publicly released footage showing Sebastian leaving the Proudfoot home or walking anywhere in the neighborhood during the hours of his disappearance. And why? Several factors explain this gap. So there's no camera that directly covers the Proudfoot's front door. So no video has been made public, and none has been confirmed by investigators that directly captures the front door area. Without a camera on that specific location, we cannot visually confirm whether Sebastian used the front door, whether he used a different exit, whether anyone else entered or exited the home, or the exact time of the departure. And then the neighborhood has significant blind spots. So investigators and multiple reports have indicated the area has large gaps in camera coverage, limited angles on key approaches. So even just going up to the house or coming directly out of the house, there's no camera footage there, and poor lighting during overnight hours. Some videos and reports describe the neighborhood as very dark with minimal street lighting. Even cameras that were recording may have captured only silhouettes, shadows, or motion blur, not clear, identifiable footage. And what footage does exist, it doesn't show Sebastian. The surveillance clips that have been publicly discussed include, and we'll dive deeper in these as we go, but a person in dark clothing walking on Kellen Lane, 1 block away around 12:17 a.m. That's going to be an important focus as we progress. Footage initially interpreted as flashlights near a yard, which the FBI later determined were vehicle headlights filtering through trees from a nearby hill, and then other isolated movements in the general area. Some believe, I think those lights could have been a garbage truck, I believe. But either way, it was determined that it was a vehicle. None of these show Sebastian. None show anyone approaching the Proudfoot home, and none provide answers. So I want to talk about the 12:17 a.m. figure controversy. Private investigator Steve Fisher, not really a big fan of him, I'll be honest with you, who works for Katie and Chris, has highlighted surveillance footage showing a person in dark clothing on Kellen Lane at 12:17 a.m. And in the video, the person appears to hide behind a car when someone walks their dog nearby, then runs in the opposite direction. Fisher believes this is significant and has spent over 100 hours reviewing neighborhood surveillance footage. Now, guys, I watched a bunch of videos on this, and he does talk about this. And it's kind of like this real big debate. And I believe this gets debunked, and it starts crossing into Steve Fisher and this conspiracy behind him and what he was doing. But Sheriff Eric Craddock has stated that law enforcement obtained this video within 72 hours of Sebastian's disappearance and determined it had no relevance in the case. I think Steve was pushing it as relevant, and the sheriff already had determined, we looked at this video, it's not relevant. So they could have done their interviews. So again, who's right? We don't know. The sheriff's never really released anything that much about the video. As far as publicly known, law enforcement has not identified the person in that video. They haven't said who it was, why they were there, or why they behaved in a way that appeared suspicious. If this person was innocent, a neighbor, a teenager sneaking out, someone walking home, why haven't they come forward? After nearly 2 years of massive publicity, that person surely knows they're on camera and yet silence. But I want you guys to be mindful that I believe the police already know who that was, and was enough to make the determination that it has nothing to do with Sebastian Rogers. So that's the 12:17 a.m. video. I just want to go back and talk about the surveillance real quick, the limitations when it comes to the front door and the uncertainty. That's a big part. So despite multiple homes in the neighborhood having security cameras, no publicly released footage shows the Proudfoot front door or Sebastian exiting the home. Because of this, several limitations affect how much weight surveillance footage can carry in understanding the events of February 25th to the 26th. So again, no direct camera captures the front door. So no videos have been made public, and none has been confirmed by investigators that directly covers the Proudfoot's front door. Because of this, we cannot confirm that Sebastian used the front door. We cannot confirm that he used a different exit, and we cannot confirm whether anyone approached, entered, or exited the home during the night. I kind of said that before. I just want to reiterate. This missing angle is one of the most significant investigative blind spots in the case. And then you have the neighborhood cameras. They have significant blind spots, as I mentioned. I just want to repeat it again. Investigators and reports have indicated that the area contains large gaps in camera coverage, limited angles overlooking key access points, and minimal or inconsistent street lighting at night. Some reports and videos describe the neighborhood as very dark with minimal illumination, meaning cameras may have captured silhouette, shadows, or movement without producing clear identification. And the existing footage shows activity near the home, but not at the door. The only surveillance clips publicly known, as I mentioned, include a person in dark clothing walking on Kellen Lane around 12:17 a.m., 1 block from home. Footage initially interpreted by some as flashlights near a yard, which we mentioned, which the FBI later confirmed were vehicle headlights passing through trees from the hill, and other isolated movements captured in the general area. None of these clips show Sebastian, show someone approaching the house, or show activity at the front door. I just wanted to get that out again because it's very relevant. The lack of door footage leaves the exit method unknown. So because no camera captured the front door, we cannot confirm whether the front door is the exit point. We cannot confirm whether the lock door indicates manual locking, automatic locking, or someone else locking it. We cannot confirm whether he left on his own or with another person. We cannot determine the exact time of exit, and we cannot eliminate the possibility of entry or exit through a different route. It's complicated. I mean, it's really complicated. Without visual confirmation, investigators must rely entirely on physical clues inside and around the home. So investigators likely have reviewed all footage, but haven't disclosed findings. Not that I could see. So if you guys know something else, let me know, but I couldn't find anything else publicly. So it's reasonable to assume investigators pulled every available camera feed, mapped all activity within the critical hours, analyzed shadows, timing, and vehicle patterns, and looked for anomalies on known access routes. However, they have not disclosed whether any unreadable or partial footage exists, whether any cameras captured ambiguous movements near the home, whether surveillance forms part of holdback information, and whether any person seen on video was identified, interviewed, or eliminated. So when I said when surveillance forms part of holdback information, like information I'm not going to give out. And this non-disclosure is standard investigating practice because it will be still considered an active investigation, but it limits public understanding of the timeline. So the bottom line is because no camera captured the front door or any clear exit from the home, the method by which Sebastian left remains one of the central unresolved unknowns of this case. And this gap in surveillance places heightened importance on the locked front door, the missing flashlight, the lack of shoes, the absence of belongings, the timing of the 10 p.m. thud, and the findings or lack thereof from K9 teams, which we'll get to. All analysis of how Sebastian left the house must be done without direct visual verification, a reality that has shaped both public interpretation and investigative direction. Because everybody, when I was looking up this case, everybody thought that he had left the front door. There's a big push that believes that he left out the front door, but there really is no evidence that says that, or nothing that was publicly released. So the timeline, what we know and what we don't know. So let's reconstruct what we can confirm. At 9 p.m. on February 25th, Sebastian goes to bed, tells his mother, "I love you," says goodbye to the dogs. Interesting about the word goodbye. 10 p.m., Katie hears a thud from Sebastian's room. He tells her he's okay. 11 p.m., between 11 and 12, Katie goes to bed. And sometime between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., Sebastian disappears. 6 a.m., February 26th, Katie discovers Sebastian is missing. 6:30 to 7 a.m., police are called. That's roughly 7-hour window, 7 hours where anything could have happened. Did Sebastian leave at 10 p.m., giving him 8 hours of darkness to travel undetected? Did he leave at 3 a.m., which would explain why no one in the neighborhood saw anything? Did he leave at 5:30 a.m., just before Katie woke up? We don't know, and without surveillance footage or witnesses, we may never know. But the physical evidence, no shoes, no belongings, locked door, missing flashlight, tells us something. Tells us this was not a typical runaway scenario. Runaways pack bags. They take money. They take phones. They take shoes. They plan. Sebastian took none of those things. He took a flashlight and nothing else. That pattern suggests extreme haste, confusion or disorientation, lack of planning, impulsive departure, or involvement by someone else. I don't even know which one's even scary out of all these. Which brings us to the question that has haunted this investigation from day one. Did Sebastian leave on his own, or did someone take him? So I want to go to the search. The search, I found nothing, unfortunately. And this is on February 26, 2024. So the response begins. The police have been called. Rescues are in motion to try to see, or search teams are in motion to try to see if they can find him. Proudfoots are worried. Seth is worried. So within hours of Katie's call to police, Sebastian's disappearance becomes an all-hands-on-deck emergency. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered child alert on the morning of February 26. This is standard procedure for a missing child, especially one with autism and other medical needs. But then, less than 24 hours later, something changed. On February 27th, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, TBI, upgraded the alert to an Amber Alert based on what they described only as additional investigative information. So now this is critically important. What's the information? I try to do research on that. Amber Alerts are not issued lightly. They're not issued just because a child is missing or because parents are concerned. According to the Department of Justice, specific criteria must be met. Law enforcement must have reason to believe an abduction has occurred or the child is in danger. The child must be at risk of serious bodily injury or death. There must be enough descriptive information to believe a broadcast will help, and the child must be 17 years old or younger. The fact that this went from an endangered child alert to an Amber Alert within 24 hours means investigators developed information indicating Sebastian was in danger, possibly abducted. But what was that additional investigative information? Law enforcement's never said. Not that I know. You guys know. Let me know. I tried looking that up as well. There's just not much information on that. And nearly 2 years later, they still haven't. This silence is standard investigative practice. You don't reveal information that could tip off a suspect or compromise the case, but it also means we're left with a critical question. What did investigators learn in those first 24 hours that made them believe Sebastian was in imminent danger? Was it something they found in his home? Was it a witness statement? Was it digital evidence? Or just a credible threat? We don't know, but whatever it was significant enough to trigger an Amber Alert, and that alert remained active nearly 2 years later. Now we're going to start to see FBI involvement. The FBI got involved in Sebastian's case after the Amber Alert was issued. They didn't take over the investigation. The Sumner County Sheriff's Office remained the lead agency, but they began assisting with digital analysis, surveillance review, national database checks, and out-of-state leads. The FBI Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, that's CARD, so Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, is typically notified when Amber Alerts suggest possible abduction and there's potential for interstate travel or when federal resources are needed. So again, to continue the timeline, February 26th, Endangered Child Alert issued, so initial search begins. February 27th, Amber Alert issued based on additional investigative information, and then the FBI involvement confirmed shortly after the Amber Alert. That's what I saw. The FBI has been supporting the case ever since, though the exact timing of their entry isn't specified in reports. I just know it's somewhere on right after the Amber Alert. So then you had the search, which was 2,000 searchers that spanned about 44,000 acres, and it was 0 results. What follows one of the most intensive searches in Tennessee history. Multiple agencies responded. So you had the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, that's TBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, Sumner County Sheriff's Office, Tennessee Highway Patrol, Nashville Fire Department, local first responders, mounted units, drone teams, helicopter crews, numerous canine units. The numbers are staggering. Approximately 2,000 total searchers, a 4.5-mile radius around Sebastian's home, roughly 44,000 acres covered, multiple retention ponds drained, bodies of water searched, wooded areas combed, neighborhoods canvassed. Canine tracking dogs, typically reliable for following scent trails, especially fresh ones, showed interest in certain areas. One was a retention pond near the home. Another was a construction site. The pond was completely drained. Nothing was found. And on March 7th, investigators expanded the search to a landfill in White Plains, Kentucky, where trash from Sebastian's neighborhood was taken. Law enforcement called this precautionary, but the exact reasoning has not been disclosed. Searching a landfill is not something done casually. It's resource intensive, psychologically devastating for families, and typically only undertaken when there's some reason, timeline analysis, specific intelligence, or elimination of possibilities to believe it could be relevant, and nothing was found there either. Hold on, guys, got to itch. By March 4th, officials announced the large-scale ground search would scale back. They would shift focus to the investigative side, which makes sense. They're trying to do the search. They can't find the search, and now they're going to go back and see what the investigators can come up to see if they can maybe target something, because right now it's just a scaled search, but maybe the investigators could find out some more information to make something more targeted. So what does the search results? What does the search results tell us? So the fact that such an exhaustive search yielded absolutely nothing, no clothing, no footprint, no physical evidence, no confirmed sighting, is itself evidence of something unusual. Think about it. If Sebastian left on foot, barefoot, in the middle of the night, canine teams should have picked up a sustained scent trail. He would have left tracks, especially if he entered wooded or muddy areas. He would likely have been injured walking barefoot on roads and rough terrain, and someone should have seen him during the 8-hour window before he was reported missing. If he had an accident, fell into water, became lost in the woods, had a medical emergency, the massive search should have found remains. Ponds and waterways were thoroughly checked. Bodies typically surface or are discovered eventually. And if he ran away and is living somewhere, someone should have seen him by now. There would have been sightings despite his medical vulnerabilities, and he would have needed help, food, shelter. The complete absence of any physical trace suggests that Sebastian didn't travel far on foot before something happened. He was taken in a vehicle shortly after leaving the home. That's what they think. He's being concealed in a way that prevents discovery, or he is no longer alive and his remains have not been found. So I want to repeat that. The complete absence of any physical trace suggests Sebastian didn't travel far on foot before something happened. He was taken in a vehicle shortly after leaving the home. He's being concealed in a way that prevents discovery, or he's no longer alive and his remains have not been found. None of these possibilities are comforting, but the search results eliminate certain scenarios and make others more likely. So sometimes the search isn't about what you find, but what you can eliminate. And that will come into play a little bit later when we talk about Seth and his recovery searches. Because it's not so much of him believing that the child could have passed, but it's also not eliminating that as an option. It's horrible. So again, none of these possibilities are comforting, but the search results eliminate certain scenarios and make others more likely. What authorities are and aren't saying. So since early March of 2024, law enforcement has held no major press conferences about Sebastian's case. When they do make statements, they're carefully worded. We have not cleared anyone, but we have no evidence of foul play. I heard that a lot, and that plays out. We have not cleared anyone, but we have no evidence of foul play. Let's unpack that sentence because it's critically important. We have not cleared anyone means no one. Parents, step-parents, relatives, acquaintances has been officially eliminated as a person of interest. So there's Seth, there's Katie, there's Chris. No one's been eliminated. The investigation remains open to all possibilities, and they're not ready to say anyone is definitely uninvolved. And then we have no evidence of foul play means no signs of struggle in the home, no blood evidence, no forensic indicators of violence, no digital evidence of grooming or contact with the predator, and no witness accounts of suspicious activity. But it does not mean that foul play didn't occur, that the case is being treated as a runaway, or that they don't have theories. Many abductions and homicide cases initially have no evidence of foul play until a body is found or a suspect confesses. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The combination of no evidence of foul play with an active Amber Alert seems contradictory, but actually quite revealing. It suggests investigators believe Sebastian is in danger, hence the Amber Alert, but they haven't found physical proof of violence, hence no evidence of foul play. Something about the circumstances indicate this wasn't a simple runaway, and they may have a theory but lack the evidence to prove it. And that brings us to one of the most frustrating aspects of this entire case. Law enforcement knows more than they're telling the public, but what they know and why they're keeping it confidential still remains a mystery. Because I think I'm very big when it's active and kind of keeping things a bit low key, but we're almost in 2 years right now. And usually when something, goes into some length like this, you assume that they may want to go back to the public and give out some more information to see if we can get some information, some help, because they'll go to the public and ask for help. But in this case here, and almost 2 years later, there's just really no information. I mean, guys, this was an interesting case to do, but it's just not a lot released. Most of the stuff that I know is released is just dysfunction. All right, so the week of silence. So this was unique. This was under scrutiny, so I wanted to bring it up, but I want to be fair in how I present it. They're going to go quiet, and they're going to move. This is Katie and Chris. And a lot of people find that weird because they think, you should stay close in case your son comes back. But they move. They leave. And a lot of people found that suspicious at first. So in the first week after Sebastian disappeared, Katie and Chris Proudfoot did not speak publicly. No television interviews, no press conference, no tearful pleas for their son's return. The silence becomes a source of intense criticism and speculation online. In missing children cases, the public has come to expect immediate media appearance from parents, tearful mothers begging for their child's safe return, fathers offering rewards and pleading with potential abductors. These appearances have become part of the expected narrative. When parents don't follow that script, suspicion follows. But there are many legitimate reasons parents might not speak publicly in the immediate aftermath, so I wanted to provide these reasons. Law enforcement often advises families to remain silent during active searches to avoid compromising the investigation. Trauma and shock can make people unable to face cameras or articulate their thoughts. Legal counsel may recommend limiting public statements to protect both the investigation and the family, and some people simply aren't comfortable in media settings, especially during the worst moments of their lives. However, in the court of public opinion, explanations don't matter as much as optics, and the optics of parents not speaking publicly for a week look bad. I think, in my mind, there was a push from law enforcement to say, hey, listen, just before you go out to the media, you don't want to give out information that could jeopardize what we're doing, could maybe tip off the person who could have Sebastian. So I'd advise you just remain low key and work with us. But I think, like with Seth, you'll find out that he gets frustrated because he's not getting information. They kind of don't return his phone calls to some extent or call him back a lot later. And I think he starts making more of an initiative to be heard. And that's where you're going to start seeing the divide between how both sides are trying to find out what happened to Sebastian. One's more vocal, one's more quiet. And then they both have their separate investigators, which I wish they would just work together because I feel like they're competing. And the problem is when you compete, you hide information from each other because it's like a competition here, and it's not. They should be sharing things, but as we'll go through, you'll see where they're handling things differently in their approach. So March 4th, I documented as Proudfoot's, so they break their silence on March 4th. So on March 4th, Katie and Chris participated in their first television interview. They described the situation as a roller coaster of helpless and hopeless and pushed back against online speculation that they were involved in Sebastian's disappearance. I think a lot of people believe that because there's just no evidence of him ever leaving the house. So they don't have the evidence on what happened inside the house. And at that point, you know, could Katie have been involved because she was alone with him at the time, or maybe something happened prior and this is the story that they're saying? So could Chris have been involved? So there was a lot of speculation. Chris told viewers it's better to stick to the facts. That's what he's telling everybody. Katie was emotional, describing the moment she realized Sebastian was gone. She said, I'd never experienced sheer panic like that. And they explained their delay in speaking publicly as following law enforcement guidance and dealing with overwhelming grief. They said they've been cooperating fully with investigators, that their home had been searched multiple times with canine units, and that they just wanted Sebastian home safely. And I believe Katie also took a polygraph. So she was very cooperative. Katie also revealed that she had taken a polygraph test administered by law enforcement, which she said she passed. A note on polygraphs. These results are not admissible in most courts because they're not considered scientifically reliable. However, law enforcement often uses them as investigative tools. A passed polygraph doesn't prove innocence, just as a failed one doesn't prove guilt. What matters more is whether investigators found the results, combined with other evidence, sufficient to eliminate someone as a suspect. The fact that Katie voluntarily took and reportedly passed the polygraph suggests cooperation, but law enforcement has never publicly confirmed the results. It's another thing. So then you get the harassment. As the case gained national attention, Katie and Chris reported experience intense harassment. People driving past their home at all hours, online accusations and death threats, true crime YouTubers filming outside their property, and constant scrutiny of their every word and action. Neighbors told reporters that the constant traffic and attention were affecting the entire block. So by late March of 2024, about a month after Sebastian's disappearance, Katie and Chris left their Hendersonville home. So now this is what I know about when they left their home. So I looked up that as well. So they left their home around late March. In the weeks following Sebastian Rogers' disappearance, the attention on the Proudfoot home grew intense. Search crews, media, and increasingly online true crime commentators all converged on their street. And within that pressure cooker, a major development happened. According to confirmed reporting, Katie and Chris Proudfoot left their Hendersonville home a little over 1 month after Sebastian vanished. This move was first reported publicly on March 28, 2024. And at that time, Chris told the media that he needed to return to Memphis for work, and Katie would be going with him while the investigation continued. But their departure wasn't just about employment. By that point, the Proudfoots reported they were receiving threatening messages. People were driving past their home at all hours, and YouTubers were live streaming outside their property. I saw that in some of the videos. Neighbors also told reporters the traffic and tension were affecting the entire block. Because of this, the Proudfoots said they left both for safety and to restore peace in their neighborhood. In the months that followed, multiple outlets, including a major February 2025 anniversary report, confirmed again that the family had moved out of the home because of harassment and intimidation. But here's what's important. There's no verified public record showing that the Proudfoots ever moved back. I checked on that. So they may still be in Memphis or whatever that second location is. Right now, it's unknown. That I couldn't find, and I'm not looking for it. No law enforcement update, no press conference, and no local news report has stated they returned to their old residence or has closed a new one. Their current location is not publicly known, and there's no documentation showing that it ever became part of the official record. So as for the most recent public information available, the Proudfoots left their Hendersonville home in late March of 2024. They cited safety, harassment, and job relocation as the reasons, and there's no confirmed reporting that they have returned to that home or disclosed a new residence. So the optics, unfortunately, is for many observers, this departure looks suspicious. Parents leaving the home where their child disappeared, the very place he might return to, the house that serves as the center of the investigation. It seemed wrong. It seemed like abandonment, or worse, like running from something. But consider what they were facing. Constant online accusations, people filming their home, death threats, financial necessity, Chris needed to work, and psychological toll of staying in a house where your child vanished. Moving under these circumstances doesn't necessarily indicate guilt. It might just simply indicate survival. So we have to be fair and look at that, even though, man, were they getting slammed. I thought this was interesting. I found that there was a Child Protective Service history in the Proudfoot home involving Sebastian. During interviews, details emerged about prior Department of Children's Services involvement with the family. According to Chris Proudfoot, there were two separate incidences. Incident one, years earlier, Chris admitted to spanking Sebastian once with a belt, one swat outside of clothing when Sebastian was caught lying. Chris emphasized this was a single incident and said it did not turn into a CPS service call. Incident two, separately, a CPS investigation was triggered when Sebastian told a teacher something at school. According to Chris, this investigation was ultimately deemed unfounded, and CPS allegedly told Sebastian he couldn't make false reports just because he was in trouble at home. I mean, think about it. If you look at this, and if this is the case, I mean, obviously, maybe there could be some issues with Sebastian and Chris, and I'm sure that would bring in issues between the real father. I don't know how I would feel if I was the real father and someone smacked my son with a belt. So I don't know what type of relationship Sebastian had with Chris. But if I was the real father, I may have a problem with that. I mean, I know I would. But on another note, I mean, if Sebastian is making up lies at, let's say, whatever it is, or CPS has determined it was a lie, that shows that he could plan. Just don't know what his motive would have been. If that's truthful. If what Child Protective Services says that Sebastian lied, and they told him you can't lie when you have trouble at home, maybe there was a motive. So maybe he is someone that could think. And now it makes you think, I don't know, again, but if these two didn't get along, Chris and Sebastian, is there a chance that maybe Sebastian left because he didn't want to be around him, and maybe he was trying to go to his father, who was about 45 minutes away? Again, you don't know. But, looking at the CPS thing, maybe he is someone who can think a little bit more long-term. So these details, whether significant or not, added fuel to online speculation about the home environment and family dynamics. So I wanted to break down a little bit of the CPS, DCS involvement. So before Sebastian disappeared, there had been some level of involvement from Tennessee Department of Children's Services, but the specifics of that involvement remain mostly unclear to the public. What is known comes almost entirely from media reports and statements made by the Proudfoot family, not from any official documents. According to reporting and interviews, DCS was called to the Proudfoot home at least once prior to Sebastian's disappearance. Chris Proudfoot has publicly acknowledged this history. In interviews, he described the CPS involvement as something that had already been reviewed and closed, with no active cases open at the time Sebastian went missing. So maybe it could be just a revisit of the belt incident. I don't know. It doesn't say. Chris has explained that there were actually two separate incidences that often get mixed together. First incident, years earlier, he admits that he swatted Sebastian once with the belt, a single swat over clothing, after catching him lying. Chris has repeatedly emphasized that this disciplinary incident did not result in a CPS report or home visit. Second incident is a completely separate CPS. Okay, never mind. Separate CPS investigation occurred when Sebastian allegedly told a teacher something at school that raised concerns. Chris claims the investigation was ultimately deemed unfounded. So unfounded means it's a lie, because you could have substantiated, unsubstantiated, unfounded. Unfounded means it's a lie. There's enough evidence to counter what the allegation is. So it wasn't unsubstantiated. That means they were able to prove that he lied, Sebastian. And that CPS even told Sebastian he could not make false reports simply because he was in trouble at home. This account comes directly from Chris, not from official CPS documentation. So interesting. Beyond these statements, no official CPS or DCS reports have been released to the public. No documents describe what the allegations were, who made the report, what was investigated, or what DCS concluded. This isn't unusual. CPS records involving minors are confidential by law. Because of this confidentiality, there are significant gaps. We don't know the time frame of the CPS visits. We don't know exactly what was said by Sebastian or anyone else. We don't know the findings beyond the Proudfoot family statements, and we don't know whether DCS made recommendations, interventions, or follow-ups. Media reports describe the case only in broad terms. There were CPS calls, the cases were closed, and no findings were made public. So what does this mean in the larger investigation? It means that while CPS involvement is part of the family history, the only information available is what the Proudfoots themselves have shared. There's no independent, verifiable record accessible to the public. And with that, the CPS component of the story remains an unconfirmed and largely anecdotal element, acknowledged but not documented. For investigators and commentators alike, the important takeaway is this. Yes, CPS had some prior contact with the family, but the details, the allegations, and the conclusions are unknown. So when discussing this case, the CPS history has to be so when I discussed this case, the CPS history was, I want to make sure it's presented carefully as something that happened, but whose significance cannot be evaluated without the records that remain sealed. So everything that I saw came from the Proudfoot family, not from documentation from CPS. So about the Proudfoots, here's what law enforcement has said. We have not cleared anyone, right? But we have no evidence of foul play. This means Katie and Chris have not been officially eliminated persons of interest, but also means investigators haven't found evidence suggesting they harmed Sebastian. The question becomes, how should we interpret parental behavior that seems unusual? So avoiding media, moving homes, post CPS involvement in the context of trauma, legal guidance, and unprecedented public scrutiny. And when does legitimate scrutiny serve the investigation? And when does it become harassment of people who may be victims themselves? Katie and Chris may be guilty of nothing more than being parents living through a nightmare while the internet watches their every move and ascribes sinister meaning to their grief. Or there may be information law enforcement has that the public doesn't, information that explains why no one has been cleared. And at this time, we don't know. What we do know is Sebastian Rogers is still missing, and whether his parents are suspects or victims, that central fact remains unchanged. So now I want to talk about Seth Rogers. Okay, so Seth Rogers, as we mentioned, is Sebastian's real biological dad. So when Katie and Chris maintained a relatively low profile, after those first interviews, Sebastian's biological father, Seth Rogers, took the opposite approach. We're starting to see opposites here. From day one, Seth was vocal, visible, and relentless. He didn't look for cameras. He didn't hide from cameras. He didn't stay silent. He demanded answers publicly, loudly, and repeatedly. And I saw this on a few of his interviews, especially on Nancy Grace and News Nation. Seth lives approximately 45 minutes from where Sebastian lived with Katie and Chris. The specifics of their custody arrangements haven't been publicly disclosed, but it's clear Sebastian primarily resided with his mother and stepfather. Seth said that he would get Sebastian, I guess, when Sebastian wasn't at school. So summer breaks, holidays, days where, he didn't have to attend school. And he absolutely refused to let the case go cold. So that's his big fight. He does not want the case to go cold, even though it has now at this point. So from the beginning, Seth stated, let me see. From the beginning, Seth stated he feared something nefarious had happened. He insisted Sebastian was not the type to wander and that this wasn't a runaway situation. Again, he refused for the case to go cold. So Seth's approach had included organizing independent searches, hiring private investigators, giving numerous media interviews, protesting outside the Sumner County Sheriff's Office, demanding that the FBI take over the investigation, and repeatedly stating law enforcement isn't doing enough. Remember, FBI is assisting, but they're not the lead. His frustration with the Sumner County Sheriff's Office has been evident and escalating. He says calls go on return. No updates are provided. No press conferences have been held since March of 2024, and he believes the investigation has stalled. From Seth's perspective, the authorities aren't treating this with urgency, the urgency it deserves. From law enforcement's perspective, maintaining investigative confidentiality is standard practice. Sharing information publicly can compromise leads, tip off suspects, or create legal problems if charges are eventually filed. This tension between a desperate father demanding transparency and investigators guarding their case is common in complex investigations, but it creates public perception problems and feeds speculation that something is being hidden. Now, he talks about recovery efforts, and that went into some speculation as well, but he's just crossing his T's, dotting his I's. Of course, he has searches, but he also has recovery because he doesn't want to overlook anything. So one aspect of Seth's search efforts has confused many observers, which is his use of the term recovery efforts while simultaneously insisting Sebastian's alive. Typically, recovery implies searching for remains rather than a living person. So why would Seth use that language? Seth and his spokesperson, Tony Mathis, have clarified they use recovery efforts to describe thorough, systematic searches of areas, including bodies of water, to definitely eliminate them as possibilities. They're conducting searches as if Sebastian might not be alive, being thorough and realistic, while hoping to find nothing because he is alive. This is actually methodologically sound, even if emotionally contradictory. It reflects the impossible position parents of long-term missing children find themselves in. They must prepare for the worst possibility while fighting for the best one. Then there was an incident here with the United Cajun Navy, which was like a failed partnership. I noticed that they were brought in and then eventually left because of controversy. So in late March of 2024, the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer search and rescue organization that gained prominence during Hurricane Katrina, joined the search for Sebastian. Their involvement brought national attention and additional search resources, but it also brought controversy. On March 29th, the United Cajun Navy withdrew from the search, citing increasing safety concerns and reporting they received death threats. They attributed these threats to the toxic online environment surrounding the case. Their withdrawal was a significant moment. It demonstrated that the online chaos wasn't just noise, it was actively interfering with search efforts and putting volunteers at risk. This is the online community, the true crimers. When the United Cajun Navy joined the search for Sebastian Rogers, the case was already being consumed by a highly hostile, deeply divided online environment. Unlike most missing child cases, this one had become a battleground between true crime YouTubers, family members and step-family members, private investigators at opposing sides, online personalities accusing each other of lying, covering up evidence, or exploiting the case, and viewers forming polarized teams and attacking anyone who challenged their preferred narrative. So we're not working together here. We're just against each other. I mean, literally and aggressively against each other. By the time UCN, that's the United Cajun Navy, entered the case, this environment had already become volatile and emotionally charged. So what triggered the threats based on UCN's own public statements? Here's the reasons they cited. Online factions saw the UCN as choosing sides because the family was split into two opposing camps. So you're going to see Seth, and then he has Dog the Bounty Hunter, or Chapman, whatever, versus Katie, Chris, and PI Steve Fisher. Any organization helping one side was accused by the other of covering up the truth, working with the wrong people, helping a guilty party, and interfering in the investigation. So here's Cajun Navy trying to come in and thinking everybody's working together, but then there's this divide. So again, you got Seth and Dog, and then you got Katie, Chris, and Steve Fisher, the investigator. This wasn't based on evidence. It was based on emotion, suspicion, and distrust. So YouTubers were aggressively pushing narratives. So certain online creators with large followings live streamed outside the Proudfoot's home, accused family members publicly, posted allegations without evidence, encouraged viewers to go get answers, and fueled a conspiracy-style atmosphere. When the UCN joined the search, these same creators began questioning their motives. This led their followers to target UCN members online. So again, now this is affecting the search efforts. Volunteer searchers were personally threatened. UCN publicly stated they received death threats, threats of violence, hostile messages accusing them of covering something up, warnings not to search certain areas, and accusations of being part of the conspiracy. These threats came primarily through social media, the same place the case had become a war zone. And you could see this act. I was looking this up. This was really intensive back and forth between both parties. I mean, his side and their side. UCN feared escalation in unsafe conditions, so search and rescue teams cannot safely operate when emotions are explosive. People are showing up to search areas armed and aggressive. Online threats may turn into physical encounters, and family conflicts spill out into public search zones. So UCN leadership said this level of hostility put their volunteers at risk, and the toxicity was interfering with effective search. And as I said, they stated that volunteers were being harassed online. Search plans leaked immediately. People attempted to follow search teams around, and rumors and false information spread constantly. This made methodical, search operations nearly impossible. Why this matters to the case: the withdrawal of the United Cajun Navy was a major red flag showing just how dysfunctional and hostile the environment around this case had become. Let me show you a picture of them so you know. Show what they look like. That's the symbol. And then I'll And that's them trying to help. From New Orleans. So the withdrawal of the United Cajun Navy was a major red flag, showing just how dysfunctional, hostile the environment around the case had become. So in most missing child cases, searchers are supported, volunteers are encouraged, community works together. In this case, searchers were threatened, families accused each other, YouTubers stirred the pot, and investigators were criticized no matter what they did. So the UCN's withdrawal made it clear. The online chaos wasn't just noise, it was actively damaging the investigation. And guys, this was at the beginning. When you want to be on point, this is the time that you want to be working together, and instead we lost that. That was solid ground to begin from at the very beginning, and it was lost because of all this. Then you get Dog the Bounty Hunter. So about 6 months after Sebastian's disappearance in September of 2024, celebrity bounty hunter Dwayne Dog Chapman officially joined Seth's effort. Dog brought massive media attention, financial resources for rewards, a public relations platform, and his company, At Night One World, with its network of donors and supporters. Together, Seth and Dog raised the reward for information to extraordinary levels. Late in 2024, it was approximately $175,000. February of 2025, it went to $347,000. By mid of 2025, it was approximately at $500,000. And then you got $50,000 from the FBI and $450,000 from Dog At Night One World and private donors. That's how you got the $500,000. So 50 from the FBI, 50,000, 450 from the bounty hunter Dog. This is one of the largest rewards ever offered in a missing child case. I just want to give you a little bit about At Night One World. So At Night and One World refer to a combined private donor network and organizational efforts that partner with Dog the Bounty Hunter and Seth Rogers to support the search for Sebastian. Think of it as a donor-backed coalition, not a government agency, not a nonprofit like the United Cajun Navy, but a privately organized effort made up of private donors, fundraisers, media-connected individuals, supporters of Dog the Bounty Hunter, people contributing money towards rewards, and a team that helped amplify missing person cases online. They're largely responsible for raising the massive reward money on Seth's side of the case. What they actually did in Sebastian's case, they raised and managed reward funds. They promoted it. So At Night One World contributed to the reward pool that eventually hit $500,000, as I mentioned, combined with Dog's contribution and donor support. They worked publicly with Dog Chapman. They partnered with Dog the Bounty Hunter to promote Sebastian's case nationally, gather tips, boost social media reach, organize community involvement, and put pressure on authorities. And then they took Seth's side in the family divide. They have generally backed the idea that more transparency is needed, the sheriff isn't doing enough, federal involvement is important, and public pressure and private searching are necessary. See, the only thing is you don't really know if they're doing it for the right reasons or they're doing it just to get exposure themselves. Again, you never know what's happening behind the scenes, but this is a father, and he felt that he wasn't being heard, so I can't fault him because I could probably find myself doing the same thing. At Night One World helped file civil lawsuits against certain YouTubers and online personalities that they felt were harassing the family, interfering with the search, and spreading misinformation. Their involvement has been both praised and criticized depending on which side observers take. Now, how do they differ from the other sides? This is Kate and Chris. So at Night One World and Set and Dog, they're public-facing, aggressive media-heavy, reward-driven, critical of law enforcement, push for FBI or federal takeover. For Kate, Chris, and Steve Fisher, they're more private, work directly with law enforcement, emphasize evidence and controlled narrative, and critical of Dog's methods and supporters. This division is part of why the case becomes so chaotic online. Dog's team has claimed they received valuable leads from multiple states, specifically mentioned Oregon and New York. They've appeared on news programs, held press conferences, some postponed due to alleged threats, and filed lawsuits against social media users they accuse of interfering with the search. But nearly 2 years later, no breakthrough has occurred. This raises questions, were the leads genuine, or is this more about publicity than results? And then the questions of effectiveness. Does a $500,000 reward help or hurt the investigation? So what are the benefits? It widens national attention. It keeps the case in the media. It motivates people who might be afraid to come forward. And it brings in tips from outside the immediate area. But what's the drawbacks? floods investigators with false leads, attracts scammers and attention seekers, motivates fabricated sightings, creates competition among search groups, and generates more noise than signal. In missing children cases where rewards exceed 100,000, tip volume typically skyrockets, but tip quality often plummets. So that's interesting because then it motivates people just to try to put their hands in the pot. Investigators must sift through hundreds of low-quality leads, slowing actual investigative progress. The reward helps with visibility, but it may hurt with signal to noise ratio. So we'll just put it out there, more people will see it, but then you're going to get information that's really not valid. And in Sebastian's case, the massive reward is just one piece of a much larger problem. The search for Sebastian has become so chaotic, so divided, so toxic that it may be preventing the very breakthrough everyone claims to want. And remember, you also got the reach from the social media who's probably pushing their own theories out there that people are running with. So, I mean, it sends the investigation to all these different areas. So, again, you got a family divided, right? So how do the families split in two? In most missing children cases, family present as a united front. You see parents, step-parents, and extended family standing together at press conferences, one message, one plea, one coordinated effort to bring the child home. Sebastian Rogers' case is not like most cases. Instead, the people who should be working together have fractured into two opposing camps, each with their own private investigators, their own theories, their own search efforts, and their own very public accusations about the other side. This isn't just disagreement about strategy. It's a full-scale war. It's complete with federal lawsuits, protective orders, cease and desist letters, mutual allegations of exploitation, accusations of creating false evidence, and claims of harassment and interference. Guys, this is all becoming a concern because we're trying to find Sebastian, and you have this conflict here that instead of everybody working together, they're divided, they're competing, and information is definitely not being shared. And at the center of this chaos is a missing teenage boy whose case may be suffering because the people looking for him can't stop fighting each other. So why is there a divide? The divide in this case is deep, emotional, and has directly affected the investigation. It didn't happen instantly. It developed over time as stress, grief, and mistrust escalated. There are 5 major factors that explain this split that I could see. So you already have pre-existing tension between Seth and the Proudfoots, so these two parties. This part is critical. Before Sebastian disappeared, there were directly signs of strained relationship between Sebastian's biological father, Seth Rogers, Sebastian's mother, Katie, and Sebastian's stepfather, Chris Proudfoot. Chris Proudfoot. Chris himself confirmed this indirectly when he said the families had tried to set aside egos and work together in the past, and that statement only makes sense if there were existing conflicts. Family court, divorce, co-parenting disagreements, and differing parenting styles can all create resentment over time, and the disappearance simply exposed and amplified those tensions. And then you have different reactions to the disappearance. After a child goes missing, families often grieve and respond differently. This happened here. So for Kate and Chris Proudfoot, they stayed mostly quiet initially until their interview on March 4th. As I mentioned, they cooperated with law enforcement privately, followed police guidance about speaking publicly, try to maintain control over the narrative, and focused on facts only and discouraged speculation. For Seth Rogers, the father, biological, he immediately engaged publicly, vocal on social media and in interviews, held protests demanding answers, wanted the FBI to take over, and conducted his own search efforts. These contradictory approaches created mistrust. Each side felt the other wasn't helping in the right way. And then you have the competing private investigators. This is a turning point that supercharged the divide. Kate and Chris hired Steve Fisher. Let me show you him. This guy, it's just not a real big fan of him. I'll be honest with you, as I said. This is him. I think he was also causing concerns with the Celeste Rivas case. So Seth hired Dog the Bounty Hunter. We know who that is. And once you have two investigators with different methods and different loyalties, several things happen. Different theories emerge. Each PI questions the other's credibility, which they did. Each reports to different people. Each releases selective information, and each side begins to distrust the information flow. Both PIs began criticizing each other publicly. Their followers picked sides, and the families followed their respective PIs. This fractured the investigation into two separate investigative universes. And then you have anger, accusation, and miscommunication. As months passed without answers, emotions escalated for Seth. He complained he wasn't getting updates from the sheriff's office. He believed the investigation stalled, and he believed important leads were ignored. For Katie and Chris, they complained they were being harassed. YouTubers were stalking their home. Seth's supporters spread misinformation, and their family was being unfairly targeted. Both sides felt attacked. Both sides believed the other was making the case harder, and this hardened the divide. And then you have the online drama, which made everything worse. So this case exploded online. YouTubers, live streamers, Facebook groups, and TikTok creators began accusing family members, investigating the case without evidence, showing up at the Proudfoot home, digging into private records, spreading rumors, fueling conspiracy theories, and attacking whichever family they didn't support. Lives were threatened. Protective orders were filed. The United Cajun Navy, as I mentioned, pulled out because of the online hostility, and the division became public warfare. So why is there a divide? You got pre-existing tension between the parents, different styles of responding to the crisis, competing investigators who do not trust each other, hurt feelings, miscommunication and resentment, and toxic online environments fueling conflict. The result is a family split into two factions fighting each other instead of working together. And as several investigators have said publicly, this divide is absolutely hurting the case. So you got Camp One, Seth Rogers, plus Dog the Bounty Hunter, and that company, Night One World, the public aggressive media driven approach, because that's what they go for. They want to be out there with the media. They want to get it out there. So Seth partnered with Dog Chapman and his company, A Night One World, to create what is essentially a publicity machine. Massive reward escalation, now at 500,000. National media appearance, social media campaigns, public pressure on law enforcement, filed federal lawsuits against YouTubers, sent cease and desist letters, organized independent searches, and demanded FBI takeover of the investigation. Their spokesperson, Tony Mathis, helps manage media strategy and coordinates efforts. Their message: we're doing everything possible to find Sebastian. Law enforcement isn't doing enough. Anyone interfering with the search needs to be held accountable. Now you have Camp 2, which is Katie and Chris, and then with Steve Fisher, the investigator, SF Investigates. They're more evidence-focused, lower profile approach. Katie and Chris have taken a different path. Generally, they maintain lower public profile, though Katie has given more interviews recently. Higher private investigator Steve Fisher emphasizes cooperation with law enforcement, focuses on evidence rather than publicity. Fisher has spent 100-plus hours reviewing surveillance footage and filed protective orders against YouTuber Bullhorn Betty. Fisher has identified what he believes is critical evidence. We talked about that before, which is including the 12:17 a.m. surveillance figure. And their message: we're working with law enforcement, following the evidence, and the other side's media circus is hurting the investigation. Now remember, the 12:17 a.m. footage that SF discovered, that was bogus, and that was already debunked by the sheriffs. So what makes the divide so toxic is that both sides aren't just disagreeing, they're actively accusing each other of sabotaging the search, which bound to happen. When people don't get along, eventually they do sabotage. Camp 1 accuses Camp 2 of not doing enough to find Sebastian. So Camp 1 would be Seth. So he accuses Camp 2 of not doing enough to find Sebastian, hiding behind law enforcement, being uncooperative and defensive, allowing harassment, and possibly having something to hide. And Camp 2 is saying about Camp 1, so that's Katie and Chris, using unlicensed investigators who can't legally operate in Tennessee, because that was something that was mentioned by SF Investigates, which wasn't proven, or at least publicly, that Dog the Bounty Hunter uses unlicensed investigators, creating and promoting fabricated evidence, exploiting Sebastian's case for money and publicity, filing frivolous lawsuits to silence criticism, and turning the search into reality TV. And Steve Fisher has publicly stated Seth Rogers is allowing exploitation to continue at his son's expense, and that he's defending Sebastian since his own father refuses to do so. I mean, that's not his call to say, Steve Fisher, sorry. Meanwhile, at night, One World issued a public call asking for information about alleged misrepresentation, impersonation, or deceptive contact by Fisher, essentially questioning his credibility. So again, it's warfare against each other, which is only killing this case, because they could be sharing information. Instead, they're just attacking each other. So now the conflict, there's legal battles. What I found is the conflicts have moved into the courtroom. So Seth Rogers, Dog Chapman, and their team filed a federal lawsuit against YouTubers. BBQ Lady, that's Stephanie Trude, and Granny's Watching, that's Jessica Sang, and 50 other unnamed individuals. Allegations of harassment, false allegations, witness intimidation, and interference with search operations. They also sent cease and desist letters warning social media users to stop posting content allegedly interfering with the investigation. And then you got the protective orders by Camp 2. Katie Proudfoot and her step-grandparents filed protective orders against YouTuber Bullhorn Betty, which is Andra Griffin. And the allegations are stalking and harassment, driving by their home while live streaming, encouraging followers to target the family, and allegedly threatening to bring a weapon to their home to get answers. Ridiculous if she's doing that. A grand jury later declined to indict Griffin on charges of violating the protective order, meaning there wasn't sufficient evidence for criminal charges, but the protective order itself remains in place. And as we said, Griffin is Bullhorn Betty. Why this matters and why it's dangerous, this division may be preventing Sebastian from being found. Think about the practical impact. So you have duplicated efforts, two separate private investigators possibly covering the same ground, possibly missing critical information the other side has, no coordination, no shared intelligence. Then you have competing narratives. The public doesn't know who to believe. Is Steve Fisher a legitimate investigator or working for a family with something to hide? Is Dog genuinely following leads or choosing publicity? The confusion means credible tips might go to the wrong place or nowhere at all. And then you got witness intimidation. If you saw something that night, who do you call? Seth's team? Katie's team? Law enforcement? What if your information implicates someone on one side or the other? The toxic environment could be silencing the very person who has the key to solving the case. Then you got a resource strain. Money that could have funded searches or forensic analysis is instead going to lawyers and legal battles between people who should be on the same side. And then law enforcement complications. Investigators must navigate this civil war. They are receiving information from two competing camps, each possibly withholding things from the other. So this case is just, who's really at fault here now? Is it law enforcement or is the war between these two families? So what's the unanswered questions? Why is the family so deeply divided? Simply a disagreement? Is it simply a disagreement about strategy? One side believes in public pressure, the other in quiet cooperation, or is it something deeper? Pre-existing family dysfunction between Seth and Katie, now exposed by tragedy? Or is it possible both sides genuinely believe they're doing the right thing, but their approaches are so incompatible that cooperation is impossible? Or, and this is the question some have asked, is the division itself somehow relevant to what happened to Sebastian? That's a question I thought I wanted to add into the mix. All right, let me get to the next part. All right, these are speculative questions raised by observers, not allegations based on evidence and possibilities that have been theorized but not proven. And they include, could Sebastian have been caught in the middle of custody or family disputes? Could he have been unhappy in his living situation, which we mentioned? Could he have left voluntarily to go to his father, but something went wrong? Could family conflict have created a situation where someone knows more than they're saying? And again, these are speculative questions circulating in the true crime community, not allegations based on evidence. But here's the irony of it all. Everyone involved claims to want the same thing for Sebastian. Seth Rogers has spent nearly 2 years searching, protesting, raising money, and refusing to let the case go cold. That's a father who loves his child. Katie Proudfoot wakes up every day in a world where her son is gone. She's cooperated with searches, reportedly taken a polygraph, and watched her life become a true crime spectacle. That's a mother living a nightmare. And Chris Proudfoot has been accused of unspeakable things online, had YouTubers film his home, and had to leave where Sebastian disappeared. And that's a stepfather who lost a child too. Steve Fisher has spent hundreds of hours reviewing footage and analyzing evidence. Maybe that's dedication, regardless of whose side he's on. But to be honest with you, when I'm sorry, I'm just not a big fan. I think he also seeks publicity. Dog the Bounty Hunter brought $500,000 in reward money and national attention to a case that could have faded. So that's good resources that's needed. And they all do want to find Sebastian, but they can't stop fighting each other long enough to do it. So I want to talk a little bit about the online chaos because it is important here when true crime becomes harassment. So pay attention to this, guys. I'm learning it too. The Sebastian Rogers case didn't just attract attention from mainstream media. It became a battleground for true crime YouTubers, TikTokers, and online sleuths, many of whom crossed the line from coverage into harassment. So you got the Bullhorn Betty saga. Andra Griffin, who operates under the name Bullhorn Betty on YouTube, has over 34,000 subscribers and describes herself as a victim rights activist who covers cases to help in the search of those missing. Katie Proudfoot and her step-grandparents saw it differently. They filed protective orders against Griffin, alleging stalking and harassment, driving by their home while live streaming, encouraging followers to aid in stalking the family, accusing the family of harming Sebastian, and allegedly threatening to purchase a gun in Tennessee and bring it to their home to get answers. Katie's step-grandfather, Terry Bowersox, wrote in his protective order that Griffin goes online and incites others to create mayhem in our lives and our family. She encourages violence by posting pictures of our home and addresses online. His spouse, Maddie Bowersox, added that Griffin threatened to purchase a gun in Tennessee and bring that gun to my home in order to get answers. The protective orders were granted by a judge who found the allegations credible enough to warrant legal protection. Later, the family claimed Griffin violated those orders through YouTube videos that included their names and hashtags and allegedly encouraged continued harassment. But here's where it gets complicated. A grand jury declined to indict Griffin on the violation charges, meaning there wasn't sufficient evidence to support criminal charges. The protective order itself remains in place, but the violation charges didn't stick. So this could mean Griffin's activities, while disturbing, may have constituted protected First Amendment speech. The evidence of specific violations wasn't strong enough, and Griffin technically complied with the order while still making the family uncomfortable. Griffin has maintained she never physically contacted the family, never tried to interview them, and was simply exercising her right to cover a public interest case. So where's the line? And then the federal lawsuit against YouTubers Seth Rogers, Dog Chapman, and their team filed a federal lawsuit against BBQ lady Stephanie Trude and Granny Watch and Jessica Sang and the 50 other unnamed individuals. Allegations, harassment, false allegations, witness intimidation, and interference with search operations. And that would be definitely connected to the United Cajun Navy. The inclusion of 50 unnamed individuals, John Doe, suggests the plaintiffs believe there's a coordinated network of people interfering with the investigation. The YouTubers named in the suit argued this is a First Amendment issue. They have the right to cover public interest cases and share opinions, even critical ones. So who's right? And then you have the credibility war between Steve Fisher and At Night One World. That's Dog Chapman, the bounty hunter. Private investigator Steve Fisher, who works for Katie and Chris and the Seth Dog Camp, have gone to war over credibility. Fisher's accusations are Dog's team uses unlicensed personnel. They employ improper investigative methods. YouTubers clutched them pearls, created fake enhanced surveillance footage for views and money. Seth allows exploitation of Sebastian's expenses, and he's defending Sebastian since his own father refuses to do so. That's what Fisher's saying. And what does Dog and his crew say? They issued a public call for information about Fisher's alleged misrepresentation, impersonation, or deceptive contact. Questions whether Fisher is actually licensed in Tennessee and suggests he's creating false narratives. Both sides accuse each other of using unlicensed investigators, creating false evidence, exploiting the case for money, harassing witnesses, and interfering with the investigation. For an outside observer trying to understand what happened to Sebastian, this noise makes finding truth nearly impossible. And the fundamental question is, where's the line between citizen journalism and harassment? So on one hand, true crime content keeps cases in public eye. Online attention can pressure authorities. Citizen investigators sometimes find leads professionals miss, and First Amendment protections are important. But on the other hand, showing up at private homes traumatize families. Making accusations without evidence damages investigations. Inciting followers to harass creates dangerous situations, and the toxic environment scares away legitimate witnesses. In Sebastian's case, the online chaos reached a point where the United Cajun Navy withdrew due to death threats. Families filed protective orders. Federal lawsuits were filed. Search volunteers were harassed, and the case became a war zone. The online attention didn't just fail to help find Sebastian, actively made the search more difficult. So what's the evidence that's not there, and what's been debunked? I did my research on that. So over nearly 2 years, various theories have emerged and been systematically eliminated. The flashing light theory we talked about earlier. Early in the investigation, security footage from a neighbor's camera appeared to show lights moving in or near the Proudfoot yard the night Sebastian disappeared. This sparked intense speculation. Was someone outside the home? Was the evidence of an abduction? The FBI analyzed the footage and determined it was a truck's headlight flickering through the trees from a nearby hill, not someone on the property. So the analysis, this shows how easily ambiguous footage can be misinterpreted. It also demonstrates law enforcement's willingness to investigate and publicly dismiss theories when evidence just doesn't support them. So they did come out and say that's not true. So stop running with that. Then you got the green hoodie person. Surveillance video from a Texas Roadhouse restaurant showed Katie interacting with a person in a green hoodie on the evening before Sebastian disappeared. Remember, that night they went to eat at a Texas Roadhouse. Katie and Sebastian. Given the proximity and time to the disappearance, this seemed potentially significant. Police identified the person as a regular restaurant customer. Restaurant employees confirmed this. Law enforcement also cleared him. So the analysis, without knowing exactly how thoroughly this person was investigated, we have to trust law enforcement's conclusion. But the question remains, how do you clear someone in a case where you have no suspect and no evidence? And then you have the 12:17 a.m. figure. This is the most controversial piece of surveillance footage in the case. Private investigator Steve Fisher highlighted video showing a person in dark clothing on Kellen Lane, 1 block from Sebastian's home at 12:17 a.m. The person appears to hide behind a car when someone walks their dog, then runs in the opposite direction. Fisher believes this is significant and has spent 100 plus hours reviewing surveillance. Sheriff Craddock says law enforcement obtained the video within 72 hours and determined it had no relevance to the case. So what are the several possibilities here? Law enforcement identified the person and confirmed they had nothing to do with Sebastian. The person couldn't be identified, but other evidence ruled out their involvement. The footage shows someone in the area, but the timing or location doesn't align, and law enforcement made an error in dismissing it. But I think they know who it was, and they were able to dismiss it because it looks like they did that with confidence. As far as publicly known, this person has not been identified. After nearly 2 years of massive publicity, if the person was innocent, you'd think they would have come forward to be eliminated. But again, law enforcement could know who that person is. They just haven't released it. And why haven't they released it? So we do have some false sightings. So multiple potential sightings have circulated. So May in 2000, this is false sightings of Sebastian. So May of 2024, there was a photo from the Blue Ridge Mountain in North Carolina that Seth Rogers said he was pretty sure showed Sebastian. This generated significant media attention, but was never confirmed. And then November of 2025, a photo widely shared online was quickly debunked by the Sumner County Sheriff's Office. The person in the photo was not Sebastian. The impact of false sightings: it consumes investigative resources, creates emotional roller coasters for the family, generates public fatigue and skepticism, obscures genuine leads, and damages the case credibility. Each false sighting means investigators must drop what they're doing to check it out. And when dozens of hundreds of false sightings flood in, often motivated by the massive reward, it becomes nearly impossible to identify the one real tip among the noise. So what do we know and we don't know? We're starting to wrap up. What we know for certain: Sebastian went to bed around 9 o'clock p.m. on February 25th, 2024. Katie heard a thud around 10 p.m. Sebastian said he was okay. He was discovered missing around 6 a.m. on February 26th. No shoes were taken, no belongings except possibly a flashlight were taken. According to Katie, the front door was locked. An Amber Alert was issued within 24 hours. A massive search found nothing. No confirmed sightings have occurred in nearly 2 years. Well, we don't know how the front door actually locks, what additional investigative information triggered the Amber Alert, whether Sebastian left at 10 p.m., 3 a.m., 5:30 a.m., whether he left on his own or with someone else, where the canine scent trails led and why they ended, who the 12:17 a.m. figure is, because we don't know that publicly, what happened to his clothes, and whether he's alive. That's about Sebastian. The most significant detail: the complete absence of any physical trace, no clothing, no footprints, no belongings, no confirmed sighting in nearly 2 years. This suggests Sebastian didn't travel far on foot. He was taken in a vehicle shortly after leaving. He's either being concealed or he's deceased and remains haven't been found. So I got some theories here, and I'm going to do a disclaimer here. So given a lack of concrete evidence, multiple theories have emerged. Let's systematically evaluate each one. So it's a disclaimer. These are analytical frameworks based on publicly available information, not conclusions about what actually happened. They're presented to think critically about the evidence. So theory one is a voluntary departure. He ran away. Supporting factors: according to Katie, the front door was locked, suggesting deliberate exit. No signs of struggle in the home. Sebastian took a flashlight, indicates some planning, and he was high functioning, capable of navigation. Contradicting factors: left behind shoes, extremely unusual in February. Left his beloved Nintendo Switch and belongings. No history of running away. No confirmed sightings despite massive publicity. High function autism still involves impaired judgment. No financial means, no phone, no resources. He has the 6q27 deletion, which would make independent survival extremely difficult. Katie said he was excited about upcoming agricultural classes, and extensive canine searches found no sustained trail. Assessment: possible but unlikely without assistance from another person. The no-shoe detail is particularly damning to this theory. Theory number 2 is accident or natural disaster. Supporting factors: nearby bodies of water, dark night with limited lighting, wooded areas where someone could become disoriented, and medical conditions could cause confusion or medical emergency. What's the contradicting factors? Most extensive search in areas history found nothing. Retention ponds were drained. Canine teams would likely have found remains. Bodies typically surface or are discovered eventually, and the area is suburban, not wilderness. So assessment: extremely unlikely given search intensity. The complete absence of any physical evidence argues strongly against this. Theory 3 was abduction by strangers. So what's the supporting factors? We do have an Amber Alert, suggests law enforcement believes possible abduction. There's no evidence Sebastian left voluntarily, so no shoes, no belongings. Complete lack of sightings suggests concealment. Predators sometimes target vulnerable individuals, and dark conditions and limited camera coverage created opportunity. But what's the contradicting factors? No evidence of forced entry. According to Katie, door was locked from inside. No witnesses or suspicious vehicles reported. How would a stranger know Sebastian would be accessible that night? No similar crimes in the area. No digital evidence of grooming or prior contact. So possible, but raises significant questions about how a stranger would know to target this house or this night and gain access without forced entry. Theory 4 is abduction or departure with someone known. So what's the supporting factors here? It could explain how someone got into the home or lured Sebastian out. Could explain lack of struggle. Could explain locked door. Sebastian locked it behind himself if departing with someone he trusted. Someone familiar with Sebastian would know his routines and vulnerabilities, and pre-existing relationships could facilitate cooperation. But the contradicting factors are: who would this person be and what would be their motive? No suspects have been named. Law enforcement says they haven't cleared anyone, but have no evidence of foul play, and no digital communication found as far as we know. Love your thoughts on this. So the assessment is theoretically possible. Theoretically possible. This would explain many of the unusual circumstances. Sebastian leaving without shoes or belongings because someone he trusted told him to come outside, perhaps saying they needed to check something or show him something. And the flashlight would be the only thing he grabbed because it was nearby. This person could have locked the door behind them. Theory 5 is something happened in the home. Got to put that in there. Supporting factors: no confirmed sighting of Sebastian leaving. No evidence of him in the surrounding area. Law enforcement hasn't cleared anyone. And history of CPS involvement, though deemed unfounded. Contradicting factors: multiple searches of the home with canine units found nothing. No evidence of foul play found. Katie reportedly passed polygraph. Where would remains be? Nothing found in a landfill. Amber Alert suggests investigators believe he left the home, and massive search should have found evidence if this occurred. So the assessment is law enforcement actions, particularly the Amber Alert, suggest they don't believe this is what happened. The additional investigative information that triggered the Amber upgrade likely indicates Sebastian left the home. Theory 6, entered water and was carried away. Supporting factors: Sebastian reportedly had a fascination with water. Nearby waterways existed. Bodies in water can be difficult to recover. But the contradicting factors are: no shoes. Walking barefoot to water in February seems unlikely. No evidence at water's edge. Ponds were drained with nothing found. Rivers and streams were searched. Canine teams showed no sustained trail towards water. So assessment possible, but physical evidence doesn't support it. The absence of any trace of water, the absence of any trace at water location argues against this theory. So the most plausible scenario, based purely on the available evidence, the scenario that explains the most factor is Sebastian left the home either voluntarily, impulsively, or with assistance from someone, and something happened shortly after that prevented him from returning, contacting anyone, or being found. This could involve being lured out by someone known to him, an impulsive departure due to confusion or distress that led to immediate danger, abduction shortly after leaving, and quick transport to another location. And what does the timeline suggest? Is it voluntary departure or outside involvement? When the key facts are analyzed together, locked front door, missing flashlight, lack of shoes, and no belongings taken, the timeline strongly points away from a classic voluntary runaway scenario. In fact, taken as a whole, these details create a profile that is far more consistent with either A, an impulsive unplanned departure under confusion or distress, or B, involvement by another person. The key factors that point to this is the Amber Alert equals investigators believe danger, possible abduction. No shoe or belongings, so not a planned runaway. No physical trace, so didn't travel far on foot. No confirmed sighting equals being concealed or deceased. Locked doors equals suggest he left, not taken from inside. And small flashlight taken means you grabbed when it was immediately available. The facts strongly argue against a voluntary planned departure. The totality of circumstances align for more closely with an impulsive, unplanned exit under confusion or distress, or the involvement, direct or indirect, of another person. This case does not fit the behavioral or logistical profile of a standard runaway. So I love your thoughts. There was a lot there to break down, but I love your thoughts. I'm leaning towards something impulsive, and then maybe being abducted at that point, or it could have been lured away. I don't see the lured away. I think he may have done something impulsively. But this is tough because he completely disappears off the radar. I think these are the questions that could solve the case, so I wanted to toss it your way. After reviewing nearly 2 years of evidence and lack thereof, certain questions emerge as critical. If these could be answered, they might break the case open. Question 1, what justified the Amber Alert? What we know, within 24 hours, investigators upgraded from endangered child alert to Amber Alert based on traditional investigative information. What we don't know is what was that information. Why it matters, Amber Alerts require belief that a child is in imminent danger, often involving possible abduction. Whatever investigators learned in those first 24 hours was significant enough to change their assessment of the situation. So possibilities, something found during the home search, a witness statement about activity near the home, digital evidence showing communication or planning, physical evidence of how Sebastian left, or pattern matching with known offenders in the area. If we knew what triggered that Amber Alert, we would understand what investigators actually believed happened. Question 2, and another question, is how does the front door lock? I think that's important. What we know, Katie says the door was locked when she discovered Sebastian missing. What we don't know, does it auto lock, require a key from outside, or have a push button lock? Why it matters, this determines whether Sebastian could have locked it behind himself, indicating planning. It locked automatically, meaning anyone could have closed it. Someone else locked it, indicating another person was involved, or the locked door means anything at all. This seemingly small detail could eliminate or support entire theories about what happened. Question 3, what time did Sebastian actually leave? What we know, sometime between 10 p.m. thud and 6 a.m. discovery. What we don't know, whether he left at 10 p.m., 8 hours of darkness to travel, 3 a.m., middle of the night, or 5:30 a.m. just before discovery. Why it matters, the timing determines how far he could have traveled, who might have been awake to see something, what surveillance might have captured, whether darkness was a factor, and how much time existed for something to happen. If we knew when he left, we know where to focus the investigation. Question 4, where did the canine scent trail lead, and why did they stop? I hear that a lot. They lost the trail, the smell, the scent. What we know is canine teams showed interest in specific locations, retention ponds, and a construction site. What we don't know is, were those Sebastian scent trails from that night or from previous innocent visits? Where exactly did trails lead? At what point did they end? Why it matters. Canine evidence is typically reliable for fresh trails. If dogs track Sebastian's scent leaving the home, following it would show his direction of travel, how far he went on foot, and where the trail ended. Vehicle pickup, water entry, other. And if we knew what the dogs actually tracked, we'd know if Sebastian walked away or was transported. Another question, only because it hasn't been publicly released, is who was in the video at 12:17 a.m. What we know, surveillance shows a person in dark clothing on a nearby street appearing to hide when someone walks a dog, then running. What we don't know, who that person is or why they behave that way. Obviously, the sheriff knows, I believe. Why it matters, even if law enforcement determine the person isn't relevant, the fact that they haven't been publicly identified is unusual. If innocent, why not come forward after 2 years of publicity? If this person comes forward and explain their presence, it would eliminate a major question in the case. And again, that would be good if they could let us know, but if they cleared it, they cleared it. And then what happened to Sebastian clothes? What we know, he went to bed wearing something. He was supposedly last seen in black sweatshirt and sweatpants. What we don't know, where are those clothes now? Why it matters? If he was abducted, those clothes exist somewhere. If he had an accident, same thing. The complete absence of any clothing is remarkable and suggests either they've been concealed, they're in a location that hasn't been searched, they've been destroyed, or he's somewhere those clothes are still on him. Finding his clothing would be a major break in the case. Another question is, why has no one been cleared? What we know, law enforcement states that they have not cleared anyone. What we don't know, what prevents them from clearing certain people. Why it matters, in most cases, investigators quickly eliminate certain people once alibis are verified and evidence doesn't point to them. The fact that nearly 2 years later no one has been cleared suggests either evidence hasn't definitively eliminated anyone, multiple people remain persons of interest, investigators are being procedurally cautious, and there's something preventing clearance we don't know about. If we knew why no one can be cleared, we'd understand what investigators are actually thinking. What's the FBI actually doing? What we know, the FBI has been involved since the Amber Alert was issued. What we don't know, what specific federal resources have been deployed, what theories have they developed, what analysis have they done. Why it matters, the FBI has capabilities local law enforcement doesn't. National databases, behavioral analysis units, advanced forensics, and interstate jurisdiction. If we knew what the FBI analysis concluded, we'd have a much better understanding of this case. And could family division be preventing a breakthrough? What we know, the family is split into warring camps, each with their own investigators and theories. What we don't know is information being shared between camps and with law enforcement, and is someone holding back information. Why it matters, in the fog of this family war, critical information might not be reaching the right people. Witnesses might not know who to trust. Coordination is impossible, and resources are wasted on legal battles. If the family could unite, or if a neutral party could facilitate information sharing, it might enable the breakthrough that's been missing. And question 10, is Sebastian alive? What we know, no confirmed sightings in nearly 2 years. Amber Alert remains active. Law enforcement hasn't declared this a recovery case. What we don't know is whether there's any reason to believe Sebastian is still alive. Why it matters, this determines what kind of search should be conducted, what resources should be deployed, what theories are most likely, and what messages should be sent to the public. Law enforcement refusal to declare this a recovery case suggests they either have reason to believe he might be alive, or they're simply not ready to give up hope. And this is where we stand today. So December of 2025, so we're 22 months and counting. As this investigation concludes, Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers has been missing for nearly 2 years. The official status, Amber Alert remains active. FBI reward of $50,000 stands. Private rewards bring a total of approximately $500,000. Law enforcement states the case is active and ongoing. No major press conference has been held since March of 2024. No suspects have been named. No arrests have been made. No major breaks have been announced. What law enforcement says, we have not cleared anyone, but we have no evidence of foul play. This carefully worded statement means, again, the investigation remains open to all possibilities. No one has been eliminated as a person of interest, but investigators haven't found physical proof of violence. They continue working with FBI and TBI partners, and they're having no stone unturned. And the lack of press conferences since March of 2024 could mean they have a theory but lack evidence. They suspect what happened but can't prove it, so they're waiting for someone to talk or make a mistake. They truly have no leads. Every lead has been a dead end, and they're hoping for new information, and they're building a case. Active investigations that would be compromised by public disclosure, but again, it's almost 2 years. The fact that the FBI remains involved suggests this is still a serious federal case. And as for the family situation, Seth Rogers continues his public campaign. So he organizes searches, working with Dog the Bounty Hunter, protesting for answers, maintaining that Sebastian's alive, and demanding greater law enforcement transparency. Katie and Chris Proudfoot maintain lower public profiles, work with private investigator Steve Fisher, location not publicly confirmed after leaving Hendersonville home, and emphasizes cooperation with law enforcement. And then you have the divide between the camps remain. Legal battles ongoing. Mutual Accusations continue, no signs of reconciliation, and both sides claim to want Sebastian. So the public response online in this case has created deeply divided communities of followers. You have intense speculation about family members, harassment of people involved, false sightings and conspiracy theories, YouTubers building followings on coverage, and protective orders and lawsuits. The most recent false sighting, November of 2025, was quickly debunked by authorities, demonstrating that public interest remains high, but also that misinformation continues to plague the case. I have that false photo. Let me show you that, guys. I have that. Bear with me. Might as well show you it. I think this is it. Let's make sure it's it. Authorities in Sumner County, Tennessee say reported sighting of Sebastian Rogers was determined to be a false alarm. The teen with autism went missing from his mother's Hendersonville home. He was last seen. Someone out there knows something. Do the right thing. I hope that this child is found. So I don't know if this is the false photo. Let me just see something. Because it kind of, I also make sure that's the false photo. Hold on. I think it's this photo. Let me see. His media's not him. Sebastian 16 has been missing. Is it this one? Let me see if this one is it. Bear with me, guys. I just want to make sure I give you the right. I think it's this one. If I'm right, I think it's this one. And that's been debunked. That's not him. It took me a second. I knew that was him, but it looks so close. All right. So what are we left with? After nearly 2 years of investigations, we have no confirmed sightings, no physical evidence, no surveillance footage of Sebastian leaving, no suspect's name, no arrest made, no remains found, no definitive theory. Just a family torn apart, a community divided, and a teenage boy who vanished without a trace. So what's the uncomfortable truth, guys? And this is the end. This is our conclusion. In nearly every missing persons case that remains unsolved for this long, the answer is disturbingly simple. Someone knows what happened, and that person hasn't talked. That someone could be a family member keeping a painful secret, a witness who saw something but didn't realize its significance, a perpetrator who has successfully evaded detection, someone who helped after the fact, someone protecting someone else, but someone knows. So based on everything we examined, here are the most likely breakthrough scenarios. Someone comes forward, a witness finally reports what they saw, an accomplice develops a conscience, a perpetrator confesses, a family member breaks the silence. Then you could have physical evidence that could be discovered. Sebastian's remains are found, hope not, but could. His clothing or belongings are located, or forensic evidence is discovered at a new location. Or you could have digital evidence that emerges, previously unreviewed surveillance footage, cell phone data from that night, social media or gaming communication, or digital forensics reveals something new. Or you could have a technological advancement. New search techniques identify remains, DNA analysis if remains are found, and enhanced surveillance review capability. And then related case breaks open if someone arrested for another crime confesses, pattern matching connects to another case, and interstate investigations identify a suspect, or the family finally unites. Information sharing between camps reveal critical details. Coordinated efforts enables breakthrough. Witnesses come forward after environment becomes less hostile. What the public can do, if you have any information, no matter how significant it seems, you can contact Sumner County Sheriff's Office at 615-451-3838. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, that's 1-800-TBI-FIND, or FBI Dog the Bounty Hunter at 833-TELL-DOG. That's 833-835-5364. Even if you think your information is minor, if you saw someone walking that night, you noticed a vehicle at an unusual time, you heard something unusual, you have surveillance footage you haven't reviewed, you know someone whose behavior changed around that time, you heard someone say something suspicious, You cannot know what piece of the puzzle you might have. Let law enforcement make the determination. And the questions that haunt us the most is Sebastian Rogers was 15 years old when he disappeared. He would be 17 December 7th. If he's alive, where is he? Who has him? Why hasn't anyone seen him? Is he being held against his will? Does he know people are looking for him? If he's not, where is his remains? What happened in those hours after he disappeared? Who is responsible? Why has no evidence been found? And when will his family get answers? So the Sebastian Rogers case has become more than just a missing child. It's become a reflection of the true crime phenomenon, where coverage can help or harm, where entertainment meets tragedy, where online sleuths can become online harassment. And then you also have family dysfunction under pressure, how tragedy can expose and amplify existing conflicts, creating chaos that may prevent resolution, and the limitation of modern investigation, how even in an age of surveillance and technology, someone can simply vanish. And then you have the need for community unity, how a divided search effort may be worse than no search effort at all. Amid all the noise, the lawsuits, the accusations, the online drama, the investigators' war, there's a danger of losing sight of what matters most. Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers, a 15-year-old boy with autism, a gamer, a kid excited about working with animals at school, someone's son, someone's brother, someone who said I love you to his mom and goodbye to his dogs before going to bed, a child who deserves to be found, a family that deserves answers, and a community that deserves closure. So until Sebastian is found, until answers emerge, until the family gets closure, this case will not be forgotten. This search will continue. The questions will be asked, and somewhere someone knows what happened to Sebastian Rogers, and they'll have to face a choice. Speak now or carry the secret forever. It's Monday morning, and somewhere in Tennessee, a bedroom sits empty. A Nintendo Switch waits unused. A spot at a table remains vacant. Agriculture classes at Beach High School continue without the student who was so excited to attend them. And a family fractured, fighting, grieving in incompatible ways, wait for a phone call that might never come. Sebastian Rogers has been missing, I have, for 657 days and counting. So, guys, if you like the content, please, I do have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. It's in the description as well as on top. This is a lot of information. I threw a lot at you. But it's an effort to help. That's all. As always, guys, stay safe.